Holding on, live. Oh, we are counting live. Here we go, folks, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 49 of the Lingaholics podcast. We are on the brink of episode 50. We just got one more to go, and then we are there for episode 50. We're going to keep everybody in the loop on Twitter about a special guest we got lined up for that episode. But that's for next episode. We're on this episode here. So how's it going? The hot pod summer is simmering on. Lots of things personally with just the languages. I've been going real hard on my German and Korean with a pinch of dabbling, as always, a little pinch. So that's always fun. And then also, not personally, but out there in the wide world, big world events happening. Cuba, things happening in Cuba, a country very dear to me, the country that inspired me to learn Spanish. We're going to be diving in on Cuba and kind of world affairs and languages. And then also here in Canada, we have a governmental position known as the Governor General. And we have a new Governor General. And there's a language situation with that one. So lots to talk about, but let's check in with the fellas. Let's go around the horn here on our little fireside chat podcast. Marco Sueco, what's going on, buddy? Oh, did I say we're on StreamYard? Did I forget
we're
that?
On StreamYard.
We're on StreamYard, not Zoom. So that means a return to YouTube.
So we're back on YouTube. That's right. So if you're listening to this, you can come check us out on YouTube now. Which is nice. We got a nice little layout. A nice new fresh look.
It's still our original. Nice. Right, but we've kept the, what would you call it? The palm tree vibe. That's been
we're basically throughout. I like it because it feels like we're in the logo. You know? Like
right.
Now. It's like an interactive. It's nice. So like if you're not watching the video, we have a background here, like where our video screens are superimposed on the palm tree background that we have in our logo. So it's nice. No, I'm very happy with StreamYard. Very impressed. Easy interface to work with. You can be creative, and then with a little bit of Photoshop skills, you're able to create a very nice, decently looking layout. Hey, so maybe we'll do some streams for this as well. Some live streams. See if we can get some people on board to come hang out with us.
Our buddy Seabolt, lots of live streams. So I think he used that last. He's used StreamYard.
Yeah. So, anyways, thanks for throwing it over to me. And I just listened to Ace Buck. Ace Buck's new app. Got the new app. Super interesting with La Chica Sophia.
Sophia.
Super interesting, honestly. Like Ace Buck, he's awesome, honestly. Like he's such a personable and likable guy. And for intelligent people like that, I feel like that is very rare because I've been in academia a lot and I've dealt with a lot of intelligent people, and they tend to be very arrogant. But Ace is not like that. He's a very humble, personable guy. And, as a podcast host, he asks really interesting and insightful questions. Let me see if I can think of a couple. So one interesting thing that Ace was talking about, which I totally resonate with, and I want to ask you guys this as well, if you've ever experienced something like this. But he said something. So he was having a conversation with this lady, and
the Miami,
and she said they were talking in Portuguese. You listened to this too, right?
The start.
Okay, but did you get to the Portuguese section?
A bit of it.
So she was speaking in Portuguese, and they were going back and forth between Portuguese and English, and then she said something in English, like very trivial. I don't remember what it was. I think it was like "save it" or something like that. Like something very trivial. And Ace didn't get it initially because he had his Portuguese filter on. So he thought that she was speaking to him in Portuguese, so he didn't understand what she was saying, even though she was speaking in English. She said something in English, and and he obviously then he started describing this experience of the confusion that can occur when you jump back and forth between different languages, and the confusion that can occur when you're perceiving a language from a different language filter. And I've experienced this myself, mostly watching TV, I think, like jumping to a new channel and initially not understanding what the language spoken is, because I'm viewing it. It's like I'm viewing it from different filters, and I'm scanning through different filters until a filter that I have matches the language that is spoken. And this does sometimes happen in like English and Swedish as well, where they're speaking in Swedish, but initially it doesn't click.
Okay.
Initially it doesn't resonate. Like initially I'm scanning through the different languages, and then until I hit like my Swedish filter, and then I perceive the interaction or the speech through Swedish, and then I understand it. Like it's very strange. It's a very strange it's a very strange phenomenon. But sometimes a language that is one of it can even be your native language. You don't understand it initially because you don't know what you don't know what the language is. So you have to put on your right filter. And like this can happen in Spanish. It's even more common in Spanish, like the languages where you aren't as strong in. It's like Spanish, Portuguese, French. Like you can turn on something, and then it takes a while until you recognize what language the conversation, the speech is in. Is that anything you guys have ever experienced?
Are you talking about like? Okay, Cody, go ahead.
Yeah, I've had experience with that. Like, I don't know. I don't remember if I've talked about this on the pod, but I've talked about this with someone in real life that when I hear some people speaking English, I don't need to pay attention. Like, it's just automatic. I don't even need to listen to what they're saying. I'll just hear and understand automatically what they're saying. But with any of my other languages, I find like that I actively. You're right. So I've had the same experience with that. Like, I need to go through the filters, I guess. When I hear a foreign language, I'm like, it takes that initial second, and you're like, okay, what language is this? And then you hear it, and you're like, oh, okay, it's that language. And I think for mine, all of them at this point, like that filter process doesn't take very long. It's almost instant, but it's not like English instant.
No, for sure.
Yeah, so
it's a short period of time. Where I'm only talking it's on the magnitude of seconds that it's a state of confusion where you don't understand what is being said.
Yeah, so like I'll
only in the very beginning
need to say like, hey, which language is this? But then I get it right away. And after that, I find that I actively need to pay attention to the conversation, because if I don't, then I just won't know what's happening. Like I can't just sit there and automatically absorb whatever they're saying. Like I need to actively listen.
Are you talking about like identifying the language, or just getting a
bearing on? My best explanation of this is filters, language filters.
You're talking about like getting a bearing on the context of what you're
just putting on the mindset of listening to a specific language. And this has happened to me in every single language, including Swedish and English.
No, Ian, I'm talking about like actually understanding what's happening in the conversation.
Right.
So like understanding everything they're saying.
That's different from what I'm
like when you about. Are you talking about like just putting on a song, putting on a TV show, hearing people talk? Like what kind of context we're talking about?
I'm talking about like hearing people on the street, like hearing a conversation when you're walking around.
So this is not you're not really hitting the point here, because this happened to Ace in this interview where he thought that Sophia was speaking to him in Portuguese, but she was speaking to him in English. And he didn't understand what she was saying.
So
he's like so focused on the language that he.
Yes, he's so focused. He expects to hear something in Portuguese that when she said something in English to him, he didn't understand it. And I have experienced that as well, where someone is speaking to me in a language that is it could be Swedish, it could be English, it could be Spanish, but I don't initially understand what is being said because I am expecting something else to be said in another language.
Yeah, I've had that a few times. That doesn't happen to me too often though.
No, it's not often. I'm just saying, has it ever happened? Like,
yeah, it's happened to me.
Well, like when we go camping, like when we're hanging out with our buddies Alejandro and Jose, when they talk amongst each other, I have to definitely lean my ear in. Like when
that's what I was
paying attention.
That's what I was
amongst native speakers themselves, I feel like they like elevate it to an even higher level.
Absolutely.
And then it's just like, whoa, like, and that's when you've just moved further away from your standard. Everybody, in Arabic, everyone talks about there's modern standard Arabic, which is Cody, I feel like I'm echoing in your speaker for some reason.
Cody, come on, man.
Sorry.
Something's happening. There's modern standard Arabic, right? And then they start differentiating. You got Egyptian Arabic, Syrian Arabic. Like that's the one language you hear it really often differentiated, where there's not really courses for El Salvadorian Spanish, Cuban Spanish, Argentinian Spanish. It's something that's definitely different. But I find like we, as learners of second languages, I find we start off with that very standardized version to start, unless you're like maybe learning in like a particular local context, and then it branches off into its specialization. So when people are like Alejandro and Jose are already like riffing to each other, I feel like whoa, it's even higher level to grasp it.
Yeah, but you're still not getting what I'm trying to say.
No, I know. And you're saying like say Alejandro was speaking to me for 10 minutes straight in Spanish, then like does 10 seconds in English. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Like, or let's say like this happened to me in Spain. I was living in Spain, and like I was so used to doing things in Spanish, in Castellano, perhaps, and then someone would say something in English or Catalan or something, and initially I wasn't expecting to hear that language, so I was just thrown off. You're thrown off for a little bit.
Yeah. But maybe especially by native speakers.
Yes, but the most common example of this that I've experienced is watching TV. So putting on a new channel, a new program, and then initially not like it taking a couple seconds to just identify the language. If that makes any sense.
To me, it's the context. Like if I just switch on to a middle of a Friends episode, what happened? What just happened?
But then it's friend. Then it's Friends. But let's say you throw on a political debate.
Sure.
A random channel. Channel. And let's say you're in Canada, so it could be French or English. It just takes like 1 second or 2 seconds perhaps to just identify the language. And those first 2 seconds, what you're hearing is gibberish. Like it's complete gibberish for like 2 seconds. And then you're like, oh, it's English. So I throw on my English filter. Or maybe it's French, so I throw on my French filter. Or maybe it's Spanish, so I throw on my Spanish filter. But the first couple seconds, it's just complete gibberish. Like it's complete gibberish. The first 2 seconds. Everything you hear is just nothing. You don't understand anything. And then, oh, wait, they're speaking in English.
If I was to like go jump in my car right now and pop on the French radio, I don't know, because I'm so Pavlovian trained. That's such a strong association.
That's different.
Okay. I'm just wondering how many of these like switch up situations are you finding yourself in?
No, rare.
Like, I know Ace was riffing.
Rare.
Yeah, okay.
It's rare, but it has happened, and it's a very weird sensation. That's all I want to say.
All I can say is in terms of like language shifting, because I speak Spanish and French, I don't know if it's just the reps that I get on a given day. When I see a kid And if that kid's a Spanish kid or if that kid's a French kid, I can switch instantaneously. Now, that's not me interpreting it. That's me switching it directly. But if there's like 2 Spanish kids and 2 French kids, like I can address each one like very quickly. And I think that's just been a thing of practice over the years where like it's kind of fun actually. Because you're like, say you're talking to one kid for like 10 seconds and you switch over to the other kid for like 5 seconds and you go back to the other kid. So that switching languages is kind of like surfing, but I think I know what you're saying is something different.
Right.
I think one could argue that that's like the reason to be a polyglot is that feeling you get when you like switch between languages. Like
you feel like you're conducting an orchestra.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
You're like running this conversation orchestra.
Guys, I didn't want this to take up too much time. I just wanted to acknowledge.
Sorry.
It's a long form podcast.
Yeah, it's a long form podcast, but maybe we should shift gears. So with that being said, I'm gonna give the word over to our Korean man. It's early morning. Exactly, it's early morning there in Seoul. So how you doing, bud?
Yeah, it's 9. Well, it's 9 o'clock, so it's not super early morning, but it's early enough.
When do people get after it? Like, do people get up uber early in Korea? Like, what's the deal there?
It's about the same as back home, maybe half an hour or an hour earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but people definitely don't screw around here. That's for sure.
No, they get after it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they usually work a little bit later too.
Right.
So like the working hours are generally longer here. Like even when I was looking for jobs here, just like especially in Seoul, like the working hours were really longer than I'm used to. But I lucked out with this new position that I got. So yeah, speaking of that, I mean my new job is getting started, kind of. Last week I started training, and this week they're on vacation, and then after that I'm going to be starting like actually teaching classes. So that's starting to take off, and I actually managed to get a bit of formal Korean studying in last week and even on the weekend, which is that felt really good. Yeah, and I just going back to my regular routine, which is nice. And yeah, just been getting a bit of Korean practice in here with some Korean native speakers because I'm living here, so great opportunities to practice with people, which is nice. So I think I've got a lot of the vocabulary for like everyday situations, maybe that Ian might be struggling with right now.
Might be.
Yeah,
I'm listening to lots of. You're right about the everyday stuff.
Yeah,
I've been thinking a lot about like beginner resources, which there's plenty of material, which I am going through. But I've often wondered that like just that daily stuff. And the disconnect, say, from like a Pimsleur or the first couple levels of Talk to Me in Korean.
Because it's different. It's totally different. Because, like, for example, I'm just trying to think of some examples. Like, when you're with somebody for, like, the whole day, and you need to go through the day together, right?
Right.
Like, what kind of vocabulary do you need to use?
Correct.
You need to say, like, hey, like, open the door, or, like, give me the towel or something like that.
Yes.
Like, hey, can you grab this for me? Or like just like stuff like that. It's like that's stuff that you usually don't learn in any kind of course by yourself.
Yeah, like I feel like taking like a Pimsleur course, right? Like if everyone's done one Pimsleur course, you basically know what the organizational structure is for the rest of their languages because they don't change it, which can be good and bad. But the point is, like Cody's making, like I think a point of a course like Pimsleur is just to get like structures in your head. It's not necessarily those little like, hey, can you clean the table? Like very, very practical level things, which I feel like something that needs to be addressed definitely in one's beginner levels. So, but
yeah, it's so fun. Yeah. like starting a new Pimsleur course, and then like you get into the episodes when they start talking about like going to a restaurant. They're like, okay,
yeah,
we're going to this again.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I've been doing it in what are they? Because they always say the city you're in. You're in
And
Kiev,
it
sitting next to the woman, and
right.
now
And
you're
it's
in.
always like
Now
an
you're in
American.
Seoul.
You are an
Yes.
American man sitting next to a Korean woman in Seoul. The Korean woman leans over and asks for the newspaper. You respond,
And then this-
"I don't have it." And then you get the sentence structure in
oh
Korean.
man, it
It's
does not
hilarious.
change. It does not change. It's the same in every language, which is kind of brilliant. Like there's no
It is brilliant.
curveballs
It is
coming at
brilliant.
you.
No curveballs.
Like
I think if
Vietnamese.
you're-
Now you're in Hanoi.
If you're learning multiple languages, I think that's actually really useful. Because then your
It
brain
is.
your brain knows what to
Right.
expect, right?
Right, because Margaret, you've done Portuguese. Did you do French back in the day?
Okay,
Pimsleur?
so let's go through my Pimsleur achievements.
Your Pimsleur resume.
I have gone through levels 1 through 5 in Spanish. Pimsleur.
There's
I've gone
five
through
for
levels
Spanish?
1 through 5 in
Jeez.
French. Le Pimsleur.
Le Pimsleur?
I have gone through levels 1 through 5 in Portuguese.
There's five for Portuguese.
Oh, wait.
Man,
maybe
I've
there's
been
only
not
four.
paying- I've
There's
been not
four.
keeping
Wait,
up
there's four. There's four.
Cuatro.
There's four. And then I've gone through the advanced ones in German. But I only think there's like 3 in German. So I think I did 3, level 3 in German. So I've done quite a lot of PIMs, and then I pinched around in with Russian, obviously.
Right, but it'd be the same thing.
Yes, I did Russian, and I have the I have the Italian one, I think.
Yeah.
All 1 through 5. So I think I'm gonna do the 5 levels in Italian at some point in the relatively near future. I think I'm gonna wait until 2022 to do that because I'm not in a hurry, whatever.
No rush. No
Oh, you don't need
All
to
right.
be in a hurry.
No, it's
No
language
rush.
learning. We're all taking our time.
Language
here.
learning.
So
Steady
I
as
think
she
I'm gonna do
goes.
that. I think I'm gonna do that in starting January 2022 or sometime in early 2022. I'm gonna start doing l'italiano.
Italiano.
L'italiano.
Un po' italiano.
Parlare l'italiano. Un po'.
You must move your hands with the
This one. It's funny now. We can make like gestures for the video. Like,
it
makes
on
sense to do.
YouTube.
That's the incentive.
Well,
for
if they're watching it on
YouTube
YouTube.
video. Yeah, you
YouTube.
get all the
YouTube
side
viewers.
effects, the video side effects, all my hand gestures.
That's right.
So,
2022 Italian.
how did we start talking about Pimsleur?
Cody saying how his daily he's picking up lots of daily vocab that you might not be able to pick up from a Pimsleur.
Mm.
Was my point about that. So
Yeah.
it's something, and that might be like we've always talked about, getting your tutor or kind of rehearsing those situations. But when you're right in the thick of it in the country itself, then boom. Está
No hace
bueno, ¿no?
falta. Oh, sí.
No hace falta. So Cody, to get back on the formal study horse, because last episode Ace talked about how the longer you're off of it, the more likely you might have like a suboptimal language learning day. But did it feel like just a sense of calm, and because you are a routine based guy, just to like
Every single time I crack open my books and I study, I feel good afterwards 100% of the time. I never feel bad after studying.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
No. Yeah. No, that's the same for me. Rarely, I might get less done, but because this is my hobby and passion,
Yeah, exactly.
So
So I just felt really good about that, and I just want to keep that feeling going. I mean, I think on the weekends usually I don't do too much, and I don't know if I'm going to be doing too much moving forward. We'll just have to see. But I mean, Monday to Friday at least, especially since my schedule fits better for that now. Like I have my mornings free, and then I work in the afternoon and the evening. So that gives me, all this time in the morning to just do whatever I want, right? And that's when I set aside time for studying and working out and whatever. cooking my lunch and things like that. So
don't you feel that's a good mix though? Like if you're going to be out and about doing things on the weekend in Korea, isn't that's like when you get to test out your stuff?
yeah, exactly. That's why I don't
Right?
really want to study on the weekends because I want to be going out doing things.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like that's a sweet balance actually.
Yeah.
Of the formal mix with the on the street.
Yeah, 100%.
Language
So
practice.
that's what I'm shooting for.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that nice balance mix of everything. So sweet.
Guys, I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll be right back, okay?
All right.
Yeah, no worries.
You guys can start introducing the next topic or something like that.
Okay, pausita. We'll do a little we'll bridge it to our today's topic.
Yeah?
Once Marcus gets back. Well, okay, I guess we'll fill Marcus back in once he gets here. Basically, yeah, sure. I'll give you I had the idea for today's podcast. They got inspired by recent events in Cuba and set aside the fact that yeah, Cuba is, even if I wasn't or really personally connected to the country, fascinating country on its own, but it just got me thinking about world events, things that happen in the news. You know, there's always something in the news, right? Like freaking the pandemic has been the main stage, but now you got things like the Olympics, right? Like
yeah, the news. I feel like the news is like coming back.
What kind of? Oh, the news, like oh yeah, like the variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it is too. I mean, like that was the weird thing about the pandemic. No, it was. Did everything else in the world just stop?
Yeah, pretty much.
It might
have.
It was
just whenever. I mean, I think it depends on the country you're in too. But I mean, at least in Canada, it was like it was at least 3/4 of the coverage was COVID.
Oh, totally right.
Yeah,
like any nightly newscast that you just tuned into, if it was not cases, infections, hospitalizations, everyone knows the drill.
So dumb, man.
Masks, everything, right? This country's stats, that country's stats.
And the part that gets me the most about it is that everybody's just sick of it too. Like you ask anybody about, like, I think there were a lot of news companies back home and also like CBC and everything like that in Canada. Mm-hmm. Their number one complaint over the pandemic has just been shut up about COVID. Like, just stop talking about it because everyone just gets so sick of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the important thing is to remember, okay, everyone's just got to, like, it's so weird now trying to think back 2019 and before. Like on any given news day before 2020, you were gonna get like such a variety of stories. Mm-hmm. Like nothing could hold the attention span. Nothing could have a grip on it quite like the pandemic.
Yeah,
did. Like if it wasn't a war or a natural disaster or you guys remember when that plane went missing in Malaysia? Like that had a.
But that was like forever ago.
I know, but at least when it happened, it was like a thing for like a month. Like grip people, but then eventually that lost steam too.
Even then, it didn't have the same grip on people that COVID does.
Well, no, like it might have only been like a month, like 10-minute segments for a month long. Yeah, no, totally. But then it eventually faded too.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. So Marcus, we were just talking about news, the nature of news. Now Cody made the comment that news is coming back. As in, there's like a bit of a variety now. It seems like it's just from like a mainstream. Finally, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no. So we're just setting the stage. I brought up just today's topic being Cuba, and then more just tying that to world events, and then now to tie this to languages. I've just been fascinated with the interplay of foreign affairs, foreign events, and the role that language plays, specifically with getting stories from on the ground in many different places to get a clear, I'm not saying like an English broadcaster, say in Cuba right now, can't make it clear, but I just feel like you're closer to it when you're consuming something in a native language. So that was my first card played on this topic.
If I may play my first card.
Yes.
Something I want to say to introduce this topic. So I'm not going to say fan of the news, but I'm a big consumer of news.
Consumer?
In general.
Yeah.
And I am aware that if you are a big consumer of news, you risk you risk experiencing you risk getting a myopic view of the world, if you know what I mean. Like if you only watch CNN, for example, you're going to get a certain perception of the world, or Fox News or CBC or whatever. You're going to get a certain view of the world that may not be accurate, right? If you only read the New York Times, that might be detrimental as well to your worldview, right? So if you
limiting.
Right. So if you are consuming news, it is very important that you be aware, or that you make sure that you are taking in a great variety, that you have a diversity in the quality of the news, in the sources, that you have a diversity in sources of news sources, right? That's very important. That's very important. Because you have to listen to different arguments. You have to get different perspectives on global affairs and events, right? Global events. And this 100%. Is where languages come in. So what I do, and what I've been doing as a language learning technique, is to subscribe to news channels all over the world in the languages that I'm learning. So on a regular basis, I watch news from Spain, Mexico, Latin America, all over Latin America, Argentina, wherever, right? I watch news from Quebec, I watch news from France, and I watch news from Germany and Sweden, for that matter. So I have like 5 different languages that I get my news in, on top of, all the different news sources in English that I consume on a regular basis. And there are 2 benefits to this. One, there's the obvious language benefit. Or there's a wide variety of benefits to this, but the obvious benefit for our purposes here is that you get a language benefit. But second of all, you get insight into what the main news stories are in the country where the news is coming from, right? So I'm watching Spanish news, and I'm learning all about like what's going on, current events in Spain, right? Which is super interesting. It gives you an insight, a unique insight that you wouldn't get if you didn't speak and understand Spanish. The same thing goes for anywhere, right?
Totally.
But it's also interesting, and especially with a thing like COVID, with an event like COVID. Watch news in other parts of the world to see what's going on. How are their news media portraying what's going on? What's the information that those people, like the Spanish population, are getting and whatnot? Like, that's super interesting. And then you can compare.
Correct.
You can compare between different countries, different languages, because there's always going to be differences. Always.
Totally.
Right? So that's my intro on news in general, news and languages, and the benefit that you get from consuming news in different languages.
Wide varieties. Yeah.
A wide variety, right? The diversity that you get.
Absolutely.
It helps to create a more comprehensive worldview, I think.
Yeah. I feel like it's not only just broadens.
It broadens your world.
I mean, it's broadened, and then it's fascinating to get into like you mentioned, it's just the classic ones of, right? CNN, Fox News, right? Always gets mentioned. But then it's like, okay, what's the CNN and Fox News of Spain? What's the CNN and Fox News of Nicaragua. I mean, because you get, it's like those two main, whatever you want to call it, like sides.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that division happens everywhere.
Yeah.
In different countries.
I think
to
it's
different
pretty
degrees.
unique, man. I think honestly, I think
you think that's
always
unique?
have news outlets that are that have different ideologies, so to speak.
Yeah,
You
well,
tend to
right.
have that. But
Yeah.
I've consumed a lot of news from a lot of different countries, mostly Western and Latin American countries,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But I've never seen anything that gets even remotely close to
okay.
the division in ideology between CNN and Fox News. That
Okay,
doesn't exist.
yeah, I guess like that's unique, but what Ian's talking about is just like that, like there's always that division always exists.
Yeah, regardless of the country.
Yeah, obviously CNN and Fox News like blow it way out of proportion, but but I mean, like in every country, like you're always gonna have like left wing or right wing news outlets. Right?
Yo, for sure. But there's nothing like what's going on in the States.
No,
nothing gets close to it.
Yeah. Right. I remember being in Honduras and being a volunteer in the barrios. This guy David, and David, whatever you want to, like, pretty left wing, and he's working with orphan kids in Tegucigalpa, and then he'd show me different newspapers in Honduras and be like, this one's like los derechistas, los golpistas, like you're showing like the biases, right? Like it's interesting when a local could like point out to you like, okay, this is from this side, and then here's this one, and he told me the ones he subscribed to, which I wouldn't later checked out, and that's more kind of fitting towards the way he leaned and everything, and that was just like on the ground in Honduras. So I think, yeah, it's like each of these countries' media ecosystems are their own kind of. If you're consuming something from that country, it's interesting to put it in perspective and contrast with what else is available in that country, right?
It's interesting. It's really interesting. So just an observation with the pandemic. So Spain, for example.
Yeah.
If you watch anything on any Spanish news outlet, like it's COVID constantly. Like it's crazy. It's way more than here. It's even more than Canada.
Oh my god.
It's constantly COVID.
With it, like,
and
do you know what's one of the main channels in Spain? RTV? Is that
RTV? That's the one I watch. But then there's
okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I know it's
RTV. That's the one that I watch. But it's constantly COVID. And as a consequence of that, the Spaniards, I think, in my opinion, they have taken COVID a lot more seriously than maybe not Canada, but definitely compared to the States, right? And that you can see that in vaccination rates as well. Like Spain has surpassed the US now in vaccinations, and it's still going up, like similar to Canada. Meanwhile, the US is like, okay, whatever, kind of. So there's a translation. There's a connection there between. Yes, there's a causal connection between how the news outlets in these the media outlets in these countries report on the pandemic, for example, and the consequences, how consequently the people react and behave. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
And I mean, I think it's really important. Countries have media critics that point out their biases. Like a favorite here in Canada is the podcast Canada Land, it's called, run by this guy Jesse Brown, who he pisses off the left wing and the right wing.
Yeah,
so he's my kind of guy. And you like pointing out like biases. I think that's seeing like where's the emphasis in different. So I guess the question is, in each of these countries, it's because there's got to be like the Canada lands of all these different countries, if it's free and democratically open, or if it's open enough that you can.
You definitely have that. You definitely have that.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. Okay, so I think there's language variety, but then on top of that, you get your mainstream media in every country, but also your alternative sources in every country. as well, like
Yeah.
a blog.
Yeah,
per
it's
se.
harder to find that though. It's hard to find because
Well, you got to be a
little
bit of
bit
a
more
hunter.
digging.
You got to be a bit of a
You gotta be a
hunter.
little bit more like that.
Kind of
But
like finding language resources.
so what we're talking about now is like we're diving into politics, right? So
Somewhat, yeah.
what's really interesting is trying to immerse yourself in the politics of the language you're learning.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Two
true.
great examples that I've experienced. One in Spain. The
Okay.
politics of Spain are very, very divisive. They're
Now, is it divisive
polarizing.
from the media or from the people that you
It's
encountered?
from the media. It's from the media too. It's
Okay.
especially when it comes to certain things like language and languages. Very controversial, very interesting to learn about. And we've talked about this before about the pod. It's
Right.
the regionalism of Spain. A very
Regionalism.
similar country experiencing very similar regionalism problems with regionalism is Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Is Canada, right? So learning, for
Yeah.
example, learning French, it's very interesting to watch Quebecois, Quebec news, and Quebec YouTube
Mhm.
channels and listen to Quebec political commentators.
Perspective.
Learn about their perspectives, hear their arguments.
Okay.
Super interesting.
Right.
Right.
Have you heard
really
anything?
do that. You can only really do that if you listen to them in French, because if you listen to them in English, it's not the same.
Well, do they even like to some they wouldn't even be in English?
No, but I'm
Right.
thinking about what's his face, the leader for the Bloc Québécois, the political party, the
Okay.
Quebec, Francois
Yeah.
Legault or whatever his name. But it's not the
Yeah.
same when you hear him speaking English. It's like,
But I'm assuming he
he's-
just has more in French to begin with.
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So like you sit down and
Yeah.
watch or listen to a podcast with him or whatever,
Right.
talking to other Quebecers in French about their feelings and political views and perspective and arguments. Like it's fascinating. And you don't get that
Yeah.
otherwise.
Right. And you're still going to have, say, like a left and a right in French, but what that left and right is going to be talking about is going to be different than the left and the right in Anglophone.
Yeah, but it's not
Canada,
just left and
too.
right. Like in Canada,
Or
Canada's
mainstream alternative, or like
in
whatever,
the
however you want to
US,
slice it.
in the US, it's very much left and right. But in Canada, it's regionalism. It's not really left and right. It's like the East versus the West, and however you wanna. Like it's not left and right. It's East versus West. I feel
Yeah,
like.
no, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I would agree with that.
I think it
But
depends
are
on the
we-
issue.
But we're not really like I remember the previous election. Like we're not really debating ideology anymore. We're debating what to do with our problems with different provinces being pissed off at each other.
Well, I don't know. I would say that definitely exists, but we also have a lot of left versus right debates.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on the issue.
It depends on the issue.
Like,
Yeah.
take lockdowns, for example. That was I don't know if that was regional. You had regional approaches to it, but even within those regions, you had pros and people for it and people against it.
Yeah.
But then,
But
like Quebec.
nevertheless, go ahead.
Well, Quebec had arguably one of the strictest lockdowns until the Habs finished that. But it would have been interesting. I should have consumed more. Well, even the thing, like I listen to French radio, but it's based here in Alberta, so they are still touching more on Alberta issues.
Yeah,
here.
but you
I didn't
still
know what the Quebec discourse was about their toque de quedas, their curfews. The whole time.
They didn't like them. Let me tell you, they didn't like them. I talk to
How do you know they didn't like it? Is that from the
I was
Quebec
talking to
media?
my talkie teacher from Quebec.
Oh yeah, well that too, right? Just friends and locals. Yeah, no, for sure.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and that's kind of
tapping into different optics. That's what I'm saying. Political optics
with, I don't know, everyone's a Google and a YouTube search away now from probably finding a really interesting news channel now. I just found a new one yesterday when I was looking up stuff for this, talking about Cuba today. It's called La Resistencia and Movistar. It's basically like a Jimmy Kimmel of Spain. I was like, whoa, like, what is this? And here I didn't really know anybody. Like I was like going on YouTube channels and clicking on videos and looking at like what's there. And I didn't really know anybody. I was like, these must just all be like local Spanish big shots or well-known people in Spain, but not so much like outside. So now it's like, you know, Jimmy Kimmel gets Brad Pitt and the Red Hot Chili Peppers on, but you know, they're globally known, but we're in Spain's getting on their late night guests. It's probably most of the times just people known in Spain. So people completely off your radar, but unless you speak Spanish and are kind of adventurous on YouTube to find some of this stuff that's out there. That was just one example recently finding stuff. So there's so much, man.
There's so much, and it's fascinating.
Oh, totally. Right. And it's just a matter of taking the time. And this, if I can draw a parallel line what you started off the show with about like catching what, like not so much what language is this, but like what the hell are they talking about? Like what's the big deal on the late night show in Spain tonight? Like what gets the conversation juices flowing? Like I have no idea. Like here in Canada, there's stuff going on, so I can kind of see what sparks conversation, but I don't know what sparks a conversation in late night TV show Spain. So
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
that's why it's so interesting.
It's very interesting because you got to take a moment to like sit back, like what am I watching here exactly? But it's a big deal. Like you look at the views; it's got like 1 million views for different eps. It's like it's obviously big. They'll comment. Oh, okay. I want to get into this. YouTube comments on different boxes. In other languages specifically.
What's the grimacing for, man?
Yeah,
that's like the like the dark pit of the scum of humanity.
At times, depending on the video. Okay, can I jump to the Cuba topic? Patria y Vida.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go.
Okay, let's give the listeners some context so they haven't been following along with Cuba. So what's today? Today's July 25th. So 2 weeks ago, some protests broke out in Cuba, and you know, varying reports as to the cause of this. Is it COVID lockdowns? Is it government mismanagement? Is it 62 years of the communist regime that's ruling there? Pick your
Is it the
cause.
US embargo?
Is it the US embargo?
Yeah.
El bloqueo.
That's a big one.
Todo eso. Lots of stuff happening, right? So as a Cuba follower for a lot of my life, on and off, since I've been there, 2009, it was like, oh, snap, like Cuba's going off. And so not only is it like a news thing that's relevant to me, but then I just start reading on Twitter and then hear a slogan being touted, I think in Cuba itself, but it's hard to get footage now with less internet access for the people to broadcast things. But in Miami, like this Patria y Vida is the slogan. Like, is that just a random slogan that got thought up of that day? No, it happens to be a song by a band. Like, I'm a huge reggaeton fan, but Gente de Zona, who I just really like. I show Gente de Zona in my Spanish class. They just have good music. I didn't know they were political at all, to be completely frank. I was kind of surprised. But so they had the song Patria y Vida with so this Yo, I can't say his name, but he was actually one of the guys on that La Resistencia and Movie Star late night show in Spain, and a couple other Cuban rappers. So they have this Patria y Vida song, which if you read some articles on NPR, they really break that down. So if you haven't been to Cuba, they're all about their revolutionary slogans there. Lots of Jose Marti, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro's slogan. So one of their slogans is Patria o Muerto. It's or Muerte, sorry. Patria o Muerte. It's like a huge revolutionary slogan there. So a play on words there, Patria y Vida, homeland and life. So kind of a bit of a jab there. So anyway, it's a song, but it came out back in February, which I had not heard that song at all.
Same. Same.
Right. It's like, oh, interesting.
It's a good song.
It's a good song. Like, even if I wish I would have heard it before it got like a political song got politicized, I guess. That's like the song has lots of baggage now. But anyways, okay.
Is it controversial though?
Well, we can get into like the politics and the history and the references behind the song, but this all started from YouTube comments that got me going on this, because I was like, man, scanning YouTube comments, yes, Cody's right. I don't really read them in English ever, but in a foreign language, I find them very fascinating because they're just like very informal language and just like spurts of thought, just like emotion and lots of emojis thrown in sometimes too. And I just find, I don't know, even if I'm not, say, picking up new vocabulary, I'm just seeing how people feel about something in another language. So I don't know if you guys have experience with YouTube comment boxes or message boards, or
I have experience
comments
with
from
like online comments or like colloquial language and text.
Okay, like text
It's kind
message.
of interesting. No, just in general. I don't know. I don't know, like Reddit maybe.
Okay,
I don't really go on Reddit a lot.
Yeah, but like
I
Reddit
mean, like,
in a foreign language.
Yeah, I've done Reddit. I try to do Reddit in like some of the like the European subreddits, because like for Chinese and Korean, like they've got their own kind of online communities. But I mean, for German, Spanish, and French, yeah, like all those countries use Reddit, and yeah, it's kind of interesting, just like reading the comment section in there. I don't really like reading the Reddit comments. I don't know, like I have a love-hate relationship.
Reddit's its own beast.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with the Reddit comment section, because like the top comments are usually really good. Like the top comments are, there's a lot of gold.
That's the upvoted stuff, right?
But then you get in like when people start commenting on those, and then it starts like these new threads, I guess.
Yes.
And these new threads can go down like so long until the next top comment. So I find myself just scrolling down through the next top comment, because it's always just stupid things that they're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm curious.
This exists on the foreign language subreddits too. So I'm like,
I'm curious about the specific comments on the Patria Vida.
Oh, overwhelmingly. Okay, two interesting things. Okay, one, overwhelmingly in favor of the song, tied to what's currently happening in Cuba. So, I mean, tying this into like world affairs, it's interesting as knowing Spanish, as a Spanish speaker, consuming this song. Because if you didn't speak Spanish, I guess you could listen to it. You could kind of get the emotion of the song. You could listen to it. You could read a translation of it. But being a Spanish speaker, like it resonates. And then I guess political leanings or thoughts on Cuba might resonate in certain ways. But it was interesting because you had in those comments on Patria y Vida, you had like, desde Argentina, like todos somos con Cuba, de Peru. Like you had all like different Latin America chiming in on this comment box. It's right there for you. It's right, like,
except Venezuela.
Yeah.
No, you know what? Those are all those comments. All those comments, those are fake accounts created by the CIA.
I was wondering, are the bots this unique and individual?
CIA.
Oh, okay, and then we can totally get into. I'd love to get into the CIA today too.
We have to.
It adds to more language stuff. It adds to the language adventure.
Just returning to Cuba.
Yes,
I don't want to get too into like the political stuff.
We don't have.
But I do want to say, because of what I did do, because I've been trying to educate myself too. I watched a couple YouTube videos in Spanish about the history of Cuba. Fascinating.
Oh, fascinating country.
But what I also did, I watched a bunch of like podcast interview with Cubans about explaining and describing their lives, in Cuba. And it's different because you hear all these stories in English news media about Cuba, and it's like, okay, but it's not palpable. it's not palpable unless you hear it from a person, a real Cuban in Spanish.
Not as palpable. Yeah.
It's not as palpable. But when you hear, I listened, like the link I sent you guys, like this 1.5 hour long interview with this Cuban. Speaking, first of all, Cuban Spanish, and I had a tweet about this. If you can understand this guy, your Spanish is advanced. Because he literally pronounces half the word. Like Cuban Spanish is like you pronounce half the word and that's it. You get rid of all consonants, first of all.
Yeah.
And then just pronounce the vowels.
So it's like French.
Wait. So absolutely fascinating to hear about, the Cuban lifestyle directly from a Cuban. And that's, it's more concrete, it's more tangible. It's more interesting as well. It's more captivating. It's more captivating to learn that way.
Yeah, and arguably challenging at times if they're using slang or fast, like you said, it's a foreign language, so you gotta like lean in, and I find it, but more enriching of an opinion that I'm getting. Like this is a guy on the street in Havana telling me what's happening right now in his own voice. But what's going on? This is like straight from the horse's mouth in Havana, and I find it hits harder.
And it's something about too, like understanding him, because you can watch. Let's say after the first thing that comes to mind is like after the tsunami in Japan, and they were interviewing people on the streets, and they were absolutely devastated, and then they were translating everything that they were saying.
Correct.
But it hits harder if you understand them directly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just in the news, right? It's just gonna be a dub over, or
you don't want. Yeah, the dub over sucks, man.
Yeah, like you're understanding it, but then that English news station might only be showing you so much, or they're just creating so much, right? Like subtitles and dubbing take time. They're obviously not gonna like show you everything. Whereas like I've been watching a ton. Last week it's called Cubanos por el Mundo, where this guy does these live streams. He's kind of a wacky dude that runs it, but he's interesting, and he's just getting like Cubans that call in all the time. Like if you're running that on an English channel, like I guess there's lots of English speaking Cubans that could easily call in, but I just feel like wouldn't have the same energy or the same. You couldn't get as much across.
Like, hearing some like monotone dubbed voice, dubbed over voice is like it's not impactful at all.
It's
like it's almost like dehumanizing, almost.
Well,
it's not like in the pejorative sense.
This ties back to like what we were talking about on an earlier pod about like when you're in a foreign country and you need a translator, it's almost dehumanizing talking to the people, right? It's almost like this. It's almost like this wall is separating you, right?
Yeah. Or you know what pisses me off? Those ads where they're like, I say something into the app, and then it responds to the person, and they get all like, oh, and then they read back into the app, the translator.
It's like, just it takes away a lot from the human experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like cut out that middleman. Like, let's go, like learn each other's languages.
Yeah, there you go.
Cross those bridges. But okay, to tie this a little closer to Patria y Vida with the specific kind of world affair, like lots still happening in Cuba. Like this song's very interesting when you get into like the lyrics. And now I know, Marcus, you had a tweet about music earlier, and
I looked into the lyrics of Patria y Vida.
Yeah, man. Like that is for the history people out there. Like, there's some very
años.
Oh yeah, which complete reference to how long they've been living under this current regime. Like 59, so 1959.
When
the Cuban Revolution happened. I think he says doble dos, I believe is the reference. Like I don't like referring to 2022.
Is that 2022?
So it's like it's doble dos. I believe he's like referring to like the present now. Like you had your 1959, I have my revolution
Uh-huh.
now, right? And then there's other references to different Cuban figures, but it's interesting how like this song came out in February. If you would have heard that back in February, like okay, like
That's pretty cool.
a guy singing about freedom in Cuba, and
But
what do you
that's an awe-inspiring song. Like after listening to that, I was like, oh man, I want to go have my own revolution. Like
right,
I'm
yeah,
totally
that's
down to go tear things up.
totally. And I
That's
feel
the
like with
feeling that I got.
languages, so if any listener, if you go back on the Lee episode 8, so Lee wanted that specific song. It's a Russian band, actually. It's not Ukrainian, but that song that plays at the start of our episode with Lee, that was like a kind of an anthem during the Euromaidan protests in 2014, and has its own like allusions and references to the state of things in Eastern Europe and Russia. Like it's interesting how political songs that become relevant can really pack a punch. And then, like we said, with consuming news media, like this, I feel like this Patria Vida song is like almost like this big underbelly to the Cuba story, because that's when you go watch the news right now. If you just see Patria Vida, but you don't know that's a reference to something, you're missing out.
Yeah, you're missing out. You're
on
not
the cultural package, the baggage.
That's such a that was totally the catalyst for all this, right? Had to be like that song. They're probably bumping that thing down in Havana.
Do you want to talk about catalysts?
I'll talk about as many catalysts as you want.
Okay. All right. This ties into language learning, so I'm gonna let it fly. Like so as soon as I learned about Patria Vida, I just typed that in Spotify and went like episodes because I want to find some podcasts about that. And there's actually lots, and there's been even more since last week. There's a ton for anybody interested in Cuba. There's a ton coming out right now, so like so much to consume. But it was funny because this one is in Spanish. She referenced how Patria Vida is very similar to the song called Winds of Change by the Scorpions, which, for those not familiar, became a very popular song before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So again, really connected to history, people, culture, music. And there's also a really awesome podcast that just came out in the last year. It's like what do you call it? Like a documentary podcast about potential connections to the CIA. Okay, I'm not for about touting conspiracy theories on this show. I'm just for entertaining ideas on this show. And if you can entertain ideas in other languages,
not a big deal.
Yeah, if you can entertain ideas, then fascinating. But parallels, I guess, of a song being connected to a movement, if that makes any sense.
Well,
so
the Americans are obviously touting this song. This is
well, that's the thing. Like, how does the song get used
to their interests?
Like Ted Cruz tweeted "Patria Vida."
I mean, look at a guy like Marco Rubio. He's Cuban.
Right? Oh yeah, but these guys have been like,
he's loving
right.
This.
Oh, of course they love it. They've been like for the fall of like the regime in Cuba for a long, long time. But say you're just a Republican in Texas who doesn't speak Spanish, and Ted Cruz is tweeting "Patria Vida." Like, you got to dig into that.
Yeah, it's supported by the Americans, like this type of
certain Americans.
Media. Most Americans.
What do you mean, type of media?
This type of like releasing songs like this.
Like, okay, but how often does this happen though? Like, I need to do more history. But if you go and listen, so there's a bonus episode in that Wind of Change series called "Rocking Venezuela," and he talks about the CIA like financing rappers in Cuba. I was like, oh, more fuel to the fire.
I don't even know if, I don't know. That makes perfect sense to me. Of course they're gonna try to do that. That's like soft power-ish. Soft
power.
I would entertain the hell out of this idea.
I can bring it to Korea. Like, not necessarily with music, but there's always been talks of like smuggling USB sticks into North Korea, which contain tons of information on it.
We all know at this point, this isn't even conspiracy, that the U.S. is like number one. The U.S. is number one in a lot of things, and another thing it's number one in is toppling governments that it doesn't like.
You're right. So my question is how.
This is the mechanism.
So, yeah.
Soft
Yeah,
power
that's
mechanism.
yeah.
Okay, but you got to remember then, if you go tell an average Cuban in Miami right now, the song was written by the CIA, they're gonna be pissed. Just like when that guy in the Wind of Change, he like goes to the Ukraine and he like kind of asks people like, hey, if you think the Wind of Change by Scorpion was written by the CIA, and people are like insulted because this song is tied to my liberty or my fight for liberty. Like, how dare you suggest this isn't of my own free will? This is something from up on high. And it, for people who are fascinated with history, this like the CIA has done this with if you guys seen the movie Argo before,
Yeah,
Ben
I've seen that,
Affleck and Iran, like that was totally a connection. In the Wind of Change, there was this tour of Africa. They got a bunch of jazz musicians to go on to promote America. So like this hand that gets played, and I feel like if you know some of the language, like Spanish in this case with Patria y Vida, and you hear the references, the allusions of those songs, then you tie it to some of these theories. And the CIA thing it's being talked about by media. Like, it's been on NPR. Like, I'm not just pulling this out of my ass.
Well, I don't know if like CIA operatives are actually like writing this, or if they're just
no,
supporting.
it's not like that.
Well,
it's just that it's like their music is being funded by the CIA.
Yeah, if they're getting payments from the CIA, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well,
maybe it's not the CIA, but some type of intermediary party. I don't know. But I mean, like, I'm just saying, the Americans love this. They love stuff like this.
Okay, specific Americans really love this.
I think he's talking about the American government.
Yeah, the American government. Like
Joe Biden said a few things, but like more Bernie Sanders types haven't said much.
Yes, but I know that Joe is still he doesn't have the nicest attitude towards the Cuban government.
Okay, like that's been American policy. Like, he didn't.
Yeah, well, not necessarily. Obama had a
but then Trump turned that back.
Cordial attitude towards, and then Trump turned it back, and now we're back to Joe, which Joe seems to not be too happy with the.
Well, you guys watched when we did the Lingaholics boot camp. We watched the Ole 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 documentary. Remember the Rolling Stones?
Yeah.
And Cuba's like the through line that entire documentary, and that showcases, I would argue, like the current Obama policy at the time, but then also like Cuba's yearning for just to see the Rolling Stones. So you kind of get like politics and your culture and your music.
I bet you the American. I don't remember the political climate exactly. When Obama visiting changed all these policies, I don't remember exactly like
just him visiting on itself.
But I hate you, the quote unquote deep state hated it.
You know what? I was going to use that term, but I was shying away from it.
No, we can do it. We're
we're grown ups. Like, people that have worked in government for a long time. That's another way to say deep state.
They probably hated it, I can imagine. But yeah, that's crazy. In America, and I have stories. I don't have personal stories, but secondary stories, or people have told me stories about going up to Canada from the States, buying a couple of Cuban cigars, going back across the border, having the border agents customs guys finding the cigars. And being like, okay, I can either find you $50,000 right here, or you turn back, You go to the closest gas station, you throw away those cigars,
Yes.
and then you come back and we try again.
Yeah. While we're on it, Canada's always had a very interesting relation to Cuba. That, like, the way we view Cuba here is quite different from the States externally. We can go to Cuba for one. That's how I went to Cuba. I'm not saying it's not impossible if you're an American. Like, I met
very
American.
hard. It's very hard. It was easy for like a couple years. Now it's hard again.
Right.
You have to go on like a tour when it has to be like essential work. You have to like, get freaking visa.
Right. And this goes back to this is actually good. This is going to connect to our Canadian politics conversation today. But our current prime minister's dad, Pierre. I want to say bro. A confidant of the late Fidel. There's actually a fascinating book. It's called 3 Nights in Havana or 4 Nights in Havana. I think it's 3. But it's about when Pierre made a visit down to visit Fidel in the 70s. And there's lots of like political stuff happening in the day. But Canada itself's always had like a softer or more cordial relationship with the Cuban regime. So it's been afforded us to go to Cuba as Canadians.
And get cigars. Get nice cigars.
Get cigars. You can see it's a fascinating country. Like I know we've talked a lot about the politics in the song. The country itself is mesmerizing. I think life is very hard and difficult for the average local there, but to put it mildly, but the country itself, man, you're almost in a time machine. Like you're in a Cold War. I heard described recently as like a Cold War time machine with the old cars. Now, granted, I was only in Havana, which is kind of a bubble in itself, but the colonial architecture, fascinating country. And the Cuban, I didn't speak Spanish at the time, so there's this life mission of mine. I got to get back. It gave me the spark, but I got to get back to Cuba to see it. So the country itself. So Canada, we've had definitely a more accessible relationship, let's say, with Cuba. But most countries besides the U.S.
Yeah, Suecos. We go to Cuba for vacation.
Yeah.
Suequitos. You can fly from Europe to Cuba, Havana directly. It's a nice. I'd love to. I've never been, but I'd go.
No. I'd go. Like these varieties, Caribbean Spanish, right? But then Cuba itself, it might have to do with like just the isolation, somewhat, of Cuba. And it's just Cuba's such a part of like popular culture too. Movies like Scarface, like
absolutely fascinating country.
Fascinating. Celia Cruz.
I'm fascinated by how, like, I call it like I see it like the alternative, like alternative globalization. Let's call it that way, because I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos from Cuba. And like all the stuff first of all, they only get oil from Venezuela. That's all the oil they have in the country.
Until recently.
You just get it straight from Venezuela. And then second of all, like you look at like all the like they have buses now. You have nice new public transportation. Right. And it's all like there's no American buses or anything. They're all from China. They have Chinese text on it.
Oh yeah. Russian smart cars.
There's no iPhones or anything like that. It's all like Huawei and Chinese made stuff. Tech.
Yeah.
Now I'm blanking on the English word, but electrodomésticos, like all that stuff like that. Your appliances.
Your
appliances at home. That's all like all from China or Russia or whatever. Like, and there's a bunch of like Russian stuff, like old Russian stuff, Soviet stuff that they got.
Totally.
In Cold War times.
Yeah.
Like there's no like it's completely different. Like you don't see anything of what you see here. Like the way of life is completely different. Like all products are completely different. They're all from another world. Like it's like an alternative global supply chain.
That's exactly
what it is. Imagine like imagine now like Panama, because like all these goods come through the Panama Canal, right? And all the ship captains are like talking to each other, like, oh, what do you go? Bringing in some iPhones from China we're going up to Miami or whatever. And then like the Cuban guy comes in, like, oh, I'm taking the same route, but I'm going to Cuba. And like they're talking to each other, and then like on one boat, on the Cuba boat, they have like all this like alternative supply chain stuff, and then on the other boat they have like all the gringo stuff, and it's completely different. It's not the same at all.
No. And they just don't have as much too. But yes, they do have all those things, but like it's like those Cuban cars are still running from the 1950s. They're not getting like parts shipped into them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Right. They have like the world's most innovative mechanics.
It's so stupid because like if the Cuban boat would be like, hey, could I just have like one of those shipping containers filled with iPhones or something? Can I have that? Like, no, that's like a big no. Like you can't have that.
Yeah.
No way.
The embargo, the blockeo, and
right. And the embargoes are so annoying because anyone doing business with Cuba are also under that embargo. So like if Sweklandia, Sweden were to like start selling stuff to Cuba, then automatically we would get punished by the US. We couldn't do trade with the US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why this embargo is so killer.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with North Korea. Like any country that does business with North Korea cannot do business with the US. That's why they have all like China has all these covert oil tankers that go up to North Korea, because officially they can't do business there, I guess. Maybe it's the same thing with Cuba. I don't know, but they're sneaky. They have to be sneaky in order to get around the embargo.
Right. Oh no, it's a huge factor.
So obviously the embargo has played a massive role on how life in Cuba looks like today, like the products and everything. Yeah.
But it's not the only factor.
Yeah, but still, you have to admit, in spite of the embargo, like Cuba has managed to achieve quite a lot with something that other Latin American countries have not been embargoed, and they're still struggling in areas where Cuba has succeeded.
Yeah, no, like down there, the education rate, like education's phenomenal. They have these specialized schools in Cuba from a very young age. Like we got to go to these concerts of these like 10-year-old kids putting on like these insane piano concerts and these dance schools, highly specialized. And like University of Havana, but it's still somewhat stratified. This is not accessible to every single Cuban, and this is any society. Like we don't have to pick on Cuba about this, but there's still like bread lines in Cuba too.
What I want to say is that something that you see in Cuba that you don't see anywhere else that I know of here in this part of the world, anyways. That when you go to education, well, fine, maybe the education is good, but you get 2 marks, 2 grades. Get how well you do on your tests, and then you get your grade on how loyal you are to the ideology and the system. You don't have that here.
There's the whole, which I think, and seeing some rebellion against that presently.
You can be a top student, you can be ace buck, but if you're critical to the government, you're not getting anywhere. You're not getting any internships, ace.
Acito. Yeah. No, Cuba's fascinating. I don't know where this present story is going. I'm so pumped to keep following it here in the news and what transpires. Because there's so much before this even happened in Cuba. Like Cuba was a hot issue. Like people have always had their stances on Cuba, but now something's going down in Cuba. So
what I learned today, the cops make like the most money in Cuba, the police, just to like avoid corruption. So the highest paid people in Cuba are like the military and the cops.
Okay, I've always heard doormen and taxi men because they get tips from tourists, but
No, everyone wants to be a cop because you make the most money. But if you're a cop, you're also loyal to the. They want to keep you loyal.
State. Okay, so let's go a little more macro with this like big world event that's happening right now. Let's take one that I want to follow up on that I haven't done, but like something I can, like, so like Haiti just had an assassination. Their prime minister, like, wild. There's a ton of French stuff that I've been neglecting because this Cuba thing, I find you only have so much like bandwidth with one's attention, but this whole Haiti situation is fascinating. So it's going to be, that's part of my goal this next week, is to get some more Haiti stuff with French resources there.
So do you know
like,
what
the
went
hell
down
happened there?
Do you know what went down?
Well, a squad ambushed the president.
No, but do you know the context?
Not completely, actually, to be completely frank.
Cody, do you know the context?
No, you know what? Honestly, I've been in the past few years, I've been very anti-news.
Right. Yeah.
So this maybe it's something we can talk about later. But no, I haven't.
That's contrary to the thesis of this episode.
I know. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm
a
man too.
Not every like language person's a news person.
I'm a news person.
Yeah.
Call me a geek or nerd or whatever, but I'm not. I listen to all arguments. Ian, you got to give me that. I listen. Everything you send me, I listen.
No, you do. You tolerate a lot of my ideas.
I get it. I listen to all ideas. I don't just block ideas, even though
that's what it be.
Maybe I listen to everything.
Sí, señor.
What was I going to say? Yes. So what happened in Haiti was that, this guy Moise or whatever, Moise. I say everything.
Man, we got a Haitian Creole. Pimsler has that.
So I did listen. I have listened to some Haitian stuff, and it's a weird French, right? Because it's Creole. It's not French. It's Creole. Whatever.
Yeah.
What happened basically that this guy, pardon my French, this guy Moise, the president, he was a real.
Pardon my Creole.
He was a real bastard.
I honestly
corrupt as hell. And the thing about, and here is hypocrisy, because I don't like hypocrisy. The U.S. has been giving a bunch of aid to Haiti after the earthquake and everything. Right? A bunch of aid. All that aid has gone to this guy, apparently.
Oh, but
so it's corrupt as hell. Meanwhile, there's no aid being given to Cuba for the same reason, right? There's no aid being to Cuba because they know that it's all going to go to Castro, and they know that, so they recognize that, but they don't recognize it with Haiti. What the hell, right? So, I am critical. I am critical of everything here. Like, I'm critical of Cuba, but I'm also very critical. I recognize that the U.S. is a dirty player in geopolitics. Now, so what happened is that this guy, the president, and I'm not super educated on this, just so everyone knows.
Me neither. Hence why I want to get into it.
This guy was hated, the president. So there are all these figures in the U.S. There was this prominent, I think he's a doctor in Miami, Haitian immigrant came in. He that allegedly, ostensibly, he's a big Haitian guy. He wants to make Haiti great again. Entre comillas.
Haitian Trump?
Yeah, Haitian Trump, whatever. So he essentially hired a bunch of ex-Colombian military guys to go in and do this job.
I heard about the Colombians.
And they were disguised as DEA agents, right? And they essentially just walked.
Former DEA agents?
No, they were disguised as DEA.
Oh, disguised.
Sorry. So they just walked straight up and said, "We're Americans," and they just let them straight into the complex, and then they went in and killed the guy.
Okay.
But the thing is that they all got caught, and now there's a power vacuum.
Yeah,
apparently, and they don't really know what to do because it's a very poor country. There's been
it's the poorest in the Western Hemisphere.
But it looks like this guy was killed by people that do not like him for seemingly altruistic reasons, right? They've seen the corruption. They want to get rid of the corruption. They want to create a more stable government.
Okay, no.
And it looks like these prominent Haitian what do you call it? Immigrants.
Yeah.
You know, Haitian heritage guys, immigrants in the U.S. are behind this because they want to get rid of the government and start something new,
right?
a better
No.
system.
Have you consumed much French news around this, or just like this, like
No,
New York
no,
Times?
this is just I've just quickly read up on it.
Yeah, so that's yeah. So it's not like English media is not.
Yes, it's not. I'm not that.
Factor.
Like I said, I'm not educated on this. I'm just
Right.
aware.
Yeah. Hence, yeah. So I'm just kind of drawing a contrast of two recent things where, that's gonna be my. I'm gonna report back next episode on.
Right.
I want to
'Cause
get
I
more
like
into
this.
the.
I like doing this. Like, you know,
Right,
I'm the
it's
type of
just-
guy, you know me. You know me. I'm a New York Times guy. Like I spent
Yeah.
hours today. Just every weekend I spend hours going through New York Times. And I just want to say a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, this guy's New York Times, like whatever. The New York Times is good quality journalism, and I stand by that. A lot of people are not fake news, whatever. It's good quality journalism. It's arguably the
They
best
got a
you can get.
Spanish version too.
And the
I know you're
Spanish version
high
is
on that. Yeah.
excellent. Like it is excellent. It is so good. And I'm on the Spanish
Yeah.
version all the time, and I'm constantly learning new vocab, and it's good. The quality is great for reading practice.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I want to just. Yeah, it's something I want to ask more audience members. Like, if you're an Arabic speaker, what was it like to watch things during the Arab Spring or the Syrian War, the Iraq War?
Mhm.
If you are a Japanese speaker, what was it like for the Fukushima? I just feel like second languages give so much more of the inside scoop, and I don't see how they can't, because it's just that much. We've started the show off. There's just that much more content to consume when you have a second language. So
Yeah, for sure. Like I remember I went to Germany right after they won the World Cup in soccer in like
yeah, 2010.
2010. No, that was Spain.
No,
Spain
sorry,
was
that was Spain.
2010.
Sorry, my mistake.
2014.
My mistake.
2014.
Yeah, that was 2014. Yeah.
2014. And I remember just like talking to people down there and them telling me stories about like how awesome it was to, you know, as a country and as a people to win the World Cup together.
Yeah.
Interesting, because you watch it on TV and everyone's happy. You're like, okay, good for them. But to actually talk to them and be like, das war unglaublich, wirklich super toll.
Genau.
Viel mehr für alles. Yeah. So
sure.
right, that was just another example of, you know, experiencing events,
the world events
in other language. And I can just imagine like speaking Arabic and, you know, living through the Arabic Spring. Or,
huge, massive,
whatever. Anything.
Yeah, really anything. It's like, wow. I think it's just something, you know, the language community, polyglots, talk so much about, the ins and outs of learning it, but like, okay, what are we doing with these languages? And I think world events, world affairs is, for us news geeks, it's right up there. Speaking of news, okay, here in Canada, big story. For some of us, I think some people do not care at all about this story, but we do, because we're the Lingaholics. So in Canada, we have the Governor General. Do you guys know the best job description of a Governor General?
You know what? I just know it's the person who sits in Parliament and like introduces each Parliament. That's all I know. Like,
isn't she like officially the
head of state, the symbolic head of state?
Yeah, she like represents the Queen.
The Queen
or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because technically the head of state of Canada is the Queen of England.
Yeah.
Okay, so she represents the
quotation mark.
Technically.
Entre comillas.
Entonces. Yes. So and we've so the general governor is appointed by the prime minister. It's I hear my echo again.
Cody, is this you pinching around because you don't have a headset?
Okay.
Hello?
Oh, okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think it's echoing from your side, bud. But
all right. So then, even in my lifetime, I think there's been like 5 or 6 general Cody, I think it's
we're echoing again. Can you get the mic away from your
Okay. All right. Whatever. Yeah. So, anyways, so we have a new governor general. Long story short, her name is Mary Simon. She is an Inuk. So from Nunavut, governor general. So she replaces. There's been different ones. Like there's been one named Adrian Clark. The last governor general we had got into some hot water with how she was treating her employees in Quebec. Whatever, it's kind of irrelevant. Okay, so this governor general, which is a very symbolic, arguably like ribbon cutting type of job that we have here in Canada. She makes zero actual political decisions, like doesn't have any power in that regard, but very symbolic, represents Canada. Okay, this governor general is bilingual. Yes, but not in both official languages. So she's an Inuk, indigenous, Native American lady from Nunavut, and she speaks English and Inuktitut. So bilingual, but not in the traditional sense that Canadians know their federal leaders, their governor generals. This first one that hasn't been bilingual, so we're treading in new territory here. And this isn't to say that she won't be bilingual, that hasn't been ruled out, but the very fact that right now that she isn't bilingual is causing a stir here in our great land of Canada, because we're officially bilingual, but this governor general speaks Inuktitut, which I think is flat out amazing, and English. Now, I'll throw it over to you guys, but like there's lots to unpack here, and there's lots she's unpacked in the media so far about why she doesn't speak French and how she does aspire to speak French, but she's already getting I don't want to say attacked. Attacked is a bit of a strong word. She's getting complaints about her appointment because she does not speak French here. So this opens a lot of can of worms. So let's dive into it.
Can you explain real quick, just for context, why are we officially bilingual, and why do all politicians
we have the
in
official
Canada speak French and English?
Well, Pierre-Elliott Trudeau, Justin's dad, Castro's buddy, he enacted the Official Languages Act that wanted to include the cultural identity. Okay, now the year it got updated in 1985, but those were the two. Okay, I don't want to get too out of my element. I need to brush up on the exact historical timeline to how everything got legislated with the Official Languages Act. But those are the two official languages.
Yeah, but in a nutshell, why? Like, why do we have French and English? Like, why not French and Spanish?
Well, the two founding colonial, we want to call them colonial powers, colonial establishments.
Okay,
Canada.
That's
the historical reason.
This is my explanation. So in Canada, we have Quebec, which if you go to Quebec, does not feel like Canada. Everyone speaks French. You don't see Canadian flags. You see.
What do you mean feel like Canada? They are Canada.
Well, it doesn't feel like Canada if you're used to Toronto or any of the western provinces. But if you go to Quebec, you see the Quebec flag. You don't see the Canadian flag. Everyone speaks French.
They're part of Canada still.
Let me just give context. They speak French, and they don't celebrate the Canadian National Day, Canada Day. They celebrate Jean-Baptiste Day, which is on a different date. They don't really they identify as their own unique nation inside of Canada.
Yeah,
nation. And there's a good reason for that, because they're different. It's like going to a different country. They just happen to be within the borders of Canada. That's the reality. Now, because of this unique nation status of Quebec, or this unique demographic or society, I guess you can call it, they have in the past, they have a history of working towards independence. They've had referendums that have almost passed in the past. There is a strong sense of nationality in Quebec, And so it's been very close in the past for gaining independence, Quebec independence, for Quebec to gain their own independence. And in order to satisfy Quebec, in order to satisfy them, or in order to get them to remain within the Union, the Canadian federal government has enacted this bilingual law, or the
Official Languages Act.
the Official Languages Act, which states
Yeah.
essentially that anything that's official government at federal government, official federal government, has to be in both French and English. That's why, like, if you watch an interview or a press conference with the Canadian Prime Minister, he's going to jump back and forth between English and French all the time. Like, everything has to be English and French. Everything. Like, you get a dog. If I go and, for example, renew my driver's license here, I get every single document is twice as long as it has to be, because I get everything in English and then everything in French.
Yeah.
And then I can either fill it out in English or French, right? So it's just to appease, to keep the Union together. Because if we don't do this, if we don't recognize French as an official language of Canada, Quebec will leave the Union, because they don't feel like they are Anglophone in any sense, in any way. They're not. They're Francophone. They're their own thing.
They voted to stay.
If they're going to be a part of Canada, we're going to have to appease them with that. We're going to have to give them French and make French a unique part of the character of Canada, the personality, if you will, of Canada. So that's why we have the law.
Okay.
That's why we have the law. You need that context, because otherwise you can't have.
You're right. The context is
the
important.
Governor
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Context is important. I 100% agree. Always, the more context, the better. Absolutely. And okay, Cody, any thoughts on this?
You know what? I want to talk about an idea that I just had. Okay. What would you guys think if Canadians were required to be not only bilingual but trilingual? This is something that I think Ian might like to hear. So
I don't like the word required.
Well, okay. I know you don't like the word required, but
mandated.
Okay, but anyway, what about the idea of when children go to school, no matter where they are, they have to learn English, French, and an indigenous language of their choosing?
So my question to that, if Ian can barely get his students to pay attention in French class, and that's an Indo-European language, how the heck is he going to get people to pay attention in Inuktitut classes?
Okay.
Hey, I just want to talk about this. I just want to entertain this idea.
As long as we promise to come back to the Governor General, because her indigenous background is highly relevant.
How about this, Cody? Cody, we address the conversation about the Governor General, and then we go into possible solutions on how to solve this issue,
okay,
and then we'll revisit this.
Let's just earmark that.
We'll earmark it,
because
you've already gotten my opinion
relevant. Okay. All right. Quebec wants to be appeased. We've been appeasing them. This is every Governor General. Every Prime Minister has been bilingual.
I think so.
Cody, we're getting the feedback again, bud. Do you think you could just? I think, Cody, it works if you just lower the volume a little bit. Lower the volume of us speaking, not your microphone.
Okay. Yeah. Where was I?
Every single prime minister so far.
Like this French appeasement has been pretty much happening the entire time. Like, I don't know how much flaws. Like, we've been offering a lot of French. I know they're not completely satisfied with the entire. Like, I know there's like language cops in French if your sign's not as big in French. Like, I know, like, they get nitpicky about it. Let's just say. All right. So this Governor General pick is also happening in a particular, I don't know if unique moment. I think unique's the wrong word. A pretty substantial moment in Canadian society where we've been trying to have truth and reconciliation with First Nations, Indigenous people for a long time. We've had these committees. Well, just recently, we've got even more truth to indigenous treatments in residential or federal schools. Now, I say federal because that's just an important point about this particular governor general. That's what she happened to attend. And at these schools, and this is why I don't like the word required or mandated, because they were mandated to speak English and prohibited from speaking their indigenous language. And now when I say indigenous language, there's over 70, possibly 80 different indigenous languages across Canada. So these all got smothered out. So, I mean, that's just as much like North America, especially one of the States, California, like there's as much, if not more, linguistic diversity in North America than in Europe. Now, that's been highly, highly diminished because a huge part of that was residential schools. Not the only part, but residential schools. You were forbidden from speaking your indigenous language. And that was part of the argument of Mary Simon. Why doesn't she speak French? Because that was obviously the immediate question. Why don't you speak French? And she said, well, in residential schools, I didn't get to learn French. I had to speak English. And okay, so yes, Quebec, and when I say Quebec, I mean just that idea of appeasing them. Okay, so we're missing French for the time being. But she did something highly symbolic when she introduced herself. She spoke in Inuktitut, which, if you know about the Canadian history and the complete decimation of Indigenous languages, and especially in the current moment when we're finding out more and more about like the atrocities that happened at these residential schools, this is just starting. We're just scratching this. We're just getting started on uncovering all this. Like, I think, yeah, it's not the official language, but these non-official languages we need to really show this, highlight this as a nation. And look, she's been an ambassador. She's 73 years old. Yeah, there's lots of arguments that why hasn't she learned French yet? And from everything I've read in the media, people have spoken about her that she's game to learn French, and it'd be super fun. Maybe you should come on the Lingaholics podcast, talk about how she's learning French. But that is such a pale concern to the fact that, like, man, it's very cool. We have a Inuk lady repping indigenous languages, which are, some are going to go extinct. Absolutely going to go extinct here. And as much as Quebec wants to complain, their language isn't going extinct here soon. So I agree that, like, if she like flat out refused to not want to speak French, completely ignore it, then I think the gripe has some merit. But in terms of her bilingualism, like, I think it's phenomenal. Like, this whole official, everything has to be in English and French. I think it's missing a lot of the Canadian experience still, and a huge part that we're currently focused on is the Indigenous one right now.
Yeah, that's very true. But what if she only spoke French and Inuktitut?
Oh, okay, yeah. So Marcus was talking about in our group.
Okay, so we're definitely getting to that point.
Yeah,
Getting to that point. So I gotta be a little careful here, because what? Okay, so Canada has an incredibly dark history when it comes to treating their Indigenous peoples, and that's the same thing in the U.S. Canada's just happens to be more recent. The same thing happened in the U.S. You had
like the States is brutal too. Don't get me wrong.
They have committed genocides. All Europeans in North America have committed genocides. Like
cultural genocides, along with genocides. Physical, partly physical.
Everything. Indirect genocides, they're bringing diseases, and direct genocides from killing people.
Yeah.
So
like, I cultural don't genocide is like kill everything about your culture.
I don't want to in any way downplay that. Like, that is absolutely horrible. And the idea of residential schools to force someone to not speak their native tongue and force integration into a society,
it's pretty awful.
Is absolutely horrible.
Physical and mental abuse if they got caught speaking it.
Every single person who is responsible for this should be prosecuted.
Yeah, and we're trying to hold
Like,
those people accountable.
like that's crimes against humanity for sure. Like 100. Like that's my position.
Yeah.
Here's the
Completely.
problem now, though, because
Okay.
I'm a pragmatist.
Okay.
I'm a pragmatist, and I know how this country works. This country has problems with regionalism, with different parts of the country having different attitudes towards each other. And I know this because I've lived in various different parts. I've traveled throughout Canada.
Yeah.
I lived in the West. I live in Ontario now, and I've spent a lot of time in Quebec. People in Quebec don't like people in Alberta, and vice versa.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's the context as well. That's important to acknowledge.
Okay.
And then also that Quebec is its own nation. That's also very important to acknowledge. Now, the thing about this, what happened is that you are setting a new president has been set. New precedent.
Yeah.
Not a president. A precedent has been set. And it's the fact that you don't have to be bilingual in French and English anymore in order to work in the Canadian government. Now, the only issue that I have...
federal position, we should be very specific.
Okay, federal position.
Yeah.
The only issue that I've had is that it's very common for political commentators, Anglophone political commentators, to criticize this bilingual law, I guess, because it is an act or a policy. We can call it. They criticize it and they say that we should get rid of it. Right. So my question to them would be, okay, let's say we get rid of the bilingual. What do you have to learn, or let's say, like, what languages are required to work in the government? Do you have to speak English? Can you only speak French? Like what Cody said.
Yeah.
Can you only speak French? Because the argument I want to target the key argument. The key argument here is that it's exclusive. It's excluding. So having this policy is excluding to people that cannot learn French for whatever reason, or have not, or cannot learn French.
Our friend,
and the argument against
JJ
that,
McCullough's argument.
Yes, exactly. And Justin Trudeau's argument against that is that people are lazy. Learn French.
We found that quote from 2008. Yes, we found that
quote.
And I
don't want to reiterate this quote because I don't want to seem arrogant. Like I think it is arrogant to say that, call people lazy for not learning a language. But what I do want to say is that as a gesture of respect to the bilingualism, to the French English coexistence, I think that everyone to a certain extent can at least try to learn each other's languages. You don't have to be perfect. We talk about this on the pod all the time. Like if you listen, especially to like certain Anglophone politicians over the years, because you have these French debates, right? Political debates all the time. So you get to hear these Anglophones who have learned French later in life speak, and they're not very good. Like they're like my French, some of them, like so very basic, and it works, right? It's still
French.
It's still French, and it works. They get their points across. They understand it. Like it is possible, without sounding arrogant. I think it is possible to say to counter these arguments with, well, you can put in an effort and build up like a basic level of fluency at minimum. If you
I agree.
And that is just to appease the coexistence, the bilingual coexistence of French and English in Canada. Because to be completely honest, if you don't uphold this official bilingualism, I think I think Quebec is going to leave. I think the country falls apart.
You're not wrong.
Okay, but is that a higher worry for me, or the extinction and treatment of First Nations people and them revitalizing and just me personally, like Quebec leaves or doesn't leave, like I'm going to bed at night. I mean, I don't know. I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm just I only live once. Like I only care about so much. The fact that like we have a chance to revitalize some of these languages, and I'm not trying to make these two things like mutually exclusive. I'm just like changing emphasis.
No, I know,
to an extent of that. Like, yes, official bilinguals, but like, do we realize that there was like 80 some languages before English or French showed up on this continent, and then some are like just still smoldering. So, I mean, it would sound somewhat absurd to be like, all right, let's make 80 official languages now, like for the 500 Michif speakers, like the Métis language. Like, no, I'm not saying that. We're not going to become South Africa in a sense. That yes, on a political union level, it's very important to focus on that. But I just feel that like this lady's already got like a ton of complaints against her.
Well,
when it's
to be fair, they're not against her; they're against her appointment. So they're mostly against Trudeau.
Indirectly, yeah. But the pact is like, okay, all those 600 people that filed complaints. Do you have anything positive to say about an Indigenous language being the addressal was made in Indigenous language, something that, sorry, English and French, but the two colonial powers tried to destroy these, like, Inuktitut wasn't supposed to exist any longer, and it's here, and I feel that, like, pleasing Quebec is secondary to really reconciling, because we're getting more truth and we are reconciling with First Nations people in this country. And I feel that the language component, because this is something gets reiterated across every First Nation from BC to Newfoundland, that language is such a fundamental thing to guard on. And now with this globalized world that we live in with the technologies, I mean, there's a lot to be said about like Indigenous language revitalization, but that's what I care about. Like, Quebec can do whatever the hell it wants.
But here's the thing though, because obviously, like what Cody just said, there are certainly Indigenous peoples who speak French and their Indigenous language, but not English. Should we exclude them from being in government too?
Like if this lady didn't say English, it's like, well, is she planning to learn?
Like, she just happens
English?
to learn. So first of all, it was wrong to force her to learn a colonial language. But why is forcing her to learn English better than forcing her to learn French? That's my question.
Well, I don't think,
like, you hear all these arguments from Anglophones saying that it's excluding, that it's even racist, right, to force people to learn French and to exclude people that don't speak French from government. But why is it okay for English speakers to join government? Like, why can't it be the other way? Like, would she be appointed governor general if she didn't speak English and only spoke Inuktitut and French?
I wouldn't be mad for a second. I wouldn't be filing a complaint.
I wouldn't be. So I just want to make it clear. I wouldn't be mad either. Like,
I think English Canadians would be up in arms about that, though.
But English Canadians, my point is that,
well, then I'd criticize them.
Anglophones, Canadian Anglophones, have it out for French people.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Language, and they're
maybe.
I want to avoid sounding arrogant here, but Anglophones in general do not have the greatest attitudes towards learning French and other languages in general.
No, you're right, 100%. And here, you know what, guys? I hate to cut the flow of things, but I have to leave the podcast early today, so you guys continue on. And
no worries, man. We'll,
that's
it's
fine.
kind of on StreamYard. We can see how long we've been going. Hour 53. So we are going to hit our 2 hours.
Yeah, but you guys can passion things out, and then
Cody,
we're going to hash this out.
Yeah, so I'll see you guys next time. Good chat.
Yeah, take care, buddy.
All right, Cody.
Okay.
Check in. Cody, you got to tune at the hour 53 to see how this concludes.
Yeah.
All right. Annyeong ikaseo. All right.
So we have to reach a consensus on this because it's very important. It's very important.
Now, it's 100% important. Yes.
So let's try to move into viable options on how to resolve this for the future.
Yeah. Let's move to that.
So the first solution that comes to mind is that you get rid of the mandate, the policy, the bilingual policy. Right?
Can I just talk on a strictly practical level? I hope this Governor General Mary Simon learns French.
Oh yeah,
and
same.
I hope she's honest, and I hope she documents this could be a big moment for just like a 73-year-old. Sorry, not you, Steve Kaufman, if you're listening, but someone like a 73-year-old picking up a new language. Like, I think that could be just for the language learning community, that could be a big win. Symbolically showing that it can be done to just the average Canadian, that can be done. And C, Quebec, like all those people that filed complaints against her can be like, okay, well, she speaks it now. So like, what was your complaint? Was it filled with Duolingo recommendations? Like what were you doing productively to help the So
okay,
that's three things.
That would be the easiest way to go for her to learn.
Well, I'm talking about a specific individual. I think you're talking about the bigger societal picture.
Picture, because a lot of people are advocating that we should get rid of this mandate.
Okay, so JJ McCullough, that's one of the guys I've been following.
Yes, but a lot of other people agree with him.
He's not alone.
He's not alone. So a lot of people. Okay, so what? Let's say you get rid of it. What do you get rid of?
So you're saying there's no more Official Languages Act.
There's no more official language. It's like the States. Okay. When the States, there's no official language. You let just the language evolve organically. You can speak whatever language you want.
Okay.
And so what's going to happen then is that English is going to take over because 56% of all Canadians have English as their native language. 56%. There's only 26% of Canadians have French as their native language. 56. So English is bigger. It's going to
26 for French, right?
26 for French.
Yeah.
And that is obviously concentrated in Quebec.
Correct.
English is going to take over, and the French are going to feel
but it's not just like there's global forces to why English would take over with like zero protection. Yes. French language. It's not just Canada, what's happening in Canada, like the culture we consume. Right. English is the global language. So yes, French always feels like it's David against the English Goliath.
So JJ McCullough, is that his name? McCullough?
Yeah,
JJ McCullough. Yeah, so he argues
people
that,
can look him
up. Getting this will increase the inclusivity of people
like
like newly arrived immigrants, for example, is like an argument that I've heard. Will easily the government will be more easily accessible to them, right? But my problem with that is that you have Haitian immigrants and African immigrants that come to Quebec that don't speak English.
Well,
they speak French and they do just fine. They do just fine in Quebec. They don't speak English, so they can't, go to other parts of Canada, the rest of Canada, and do that. So, like, if you make indirectly English as the primary language of the Canadian government, which will happen if you get rid of this mandate, that's what's going to happen organically. Then you're excluding all of them. Is that
might be a bit of an assumption?
Of course you will.
Okay, you're saying the federal government will be exclusively English.
That's what's going to happen. Like all federal affairs are going to be.
I don't know that. I don't.
Well, look at the States. The biggest language in the States is English. They don't have an official language mandate.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think we might have to separate some of the political, societal stuff here. Yeah. On a federal level, it could be susceptible. Now, we are pretty ingrained now. I'd argue Official Language Act, no Official Language Act. That, I mean, I feel like federal MPs just wouldn't speak it here out west, whereas if you had more francophone ridings, there would still be I'm basically like arguing like a free market incentive. Do you have an incentive as a politician to speak it and address constituents in that language? Like, I feel like that would be a very riding specific incentive.
So you're saying that you would organically have an edge.
I think there'd be incentives.
Political Darwinism. The politicians that speak French will have a higher probability of being elected. And so people you're saying that you're going to continue having, even though you get rid of the law, policy, the most successful politicians are going to be the bilingual politicians.
if the ones that want to capitalize the most be like, whoa, like 50% of my constituency is French, I should probably learn French. Now,
that's fair.
If you're in Vancouver, that could be 50% in Cantonese. Do you have an incentive to learn Cantonese? You might very well do. You might very well have that. Now, a pragmatist argument would be like, well, look, Ian, just keep the French-English framework. Like, that's historically what this is founded upon. Okay, valid point. Like there's more German here in the prairies than French. Like, some of those stats are pretty wild that we forget about, but we don't see German just doesn't have its presence like publicly like French does. But if I'm running for office here in Alberta, I could see an argument where it's more like useful to learn German instead of French. So yeah, Darwinist in a sense of like a free market. Like, what's my incentive to communicate with people? Now, I think the lingua franca of the nation is where your argument has its most pull. Like, most people are going to go for English because that's the second language.
56%.
Still
56%
speak English, but not even. No, how many speak it even as a second language too in Canada? Like, that's got to be huge. Yeah. Like, even like how many Quebecers speak English? Like, it's big.
Oh, what?
Right? Why?
What?
Alors, yeah. So I think the second language, people will be like, oh, look, I'm not gonna learn Cantonese. I'm not gonna learn German. Like, everyone speaks English as a second language. So I think that's where your argument convinces me in the sense of like it would take over in a sense that it's the lingua franca. It's why Swahili is the main language in Kenya federally, but then they have all the tribal languages underneath it. So, would English just take over federally if, say, like?
Well, it's not going to take over in Quebec. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, no. Honestly, like, and here's my point to Quebec. Do you think like Miami, Cuba needs a bunch of protectionist policies right now to protect its Cuban culture? No, it doesn't. It's flourishing as a Spanish culture on its own. You can go to salsa night, domino night, cigar night, and it's all in Spanish. And they didn't need a single law to have
but like
any of those events.
Miami, that's such a small part of the U.S. Cuba or Quebec is like a quarter of the Canada.
There's 8 million Quebecois? How many Cubans are there in Miami?
No, but I'm saying it's like a lot, man. It might be like a third of Canada is like Quebec, which is like it's significantly it's its own nation. Like, it's like even more distinguished. Like the distinction between Quebec and the rest of Canada, which I think is funny. They call it the Rock in Quebec. Rest of Canada, the Rock. Like that cloak. But like the distinction between Quebec and the Rock is greater than, for example, the distinction between Catalonia and the rest of Spain. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a significant change culturally between the Rock and Quebec. So it's a very unique situation that you don't have in the States. You don't have that in the States. But it's not. It's like they have their own government.
This nation status. Yeah. Like, I get what you're saying. No state has its own state language of Spanish.
Like an analogy.
I get what you're saying.
Like, imagine Germany. You've been to Germany, right?
Austria.
No. You've been to Austria. Okay. Imagine Germany and then the Czech Republic. Like, you have a pretty good understanding of Czech versus German, right? Imagine if the Czech Republic were a part of Germany. So you had Germany, which was like Germany, and then the Czech Republic, but it was all under the same border or whatever.
Okay.
That's kind of what it is in Canada. Yeah, that's kind of what it is in Canada and in Canada.
Right. Like
Quebec and the Rock. It's like you have this majority Anglophone large part of the country, and then you have a French part that is significant, is distinguished culturally. They speak a different language, and there's this nationalistic pride as well, where you're not flying the Canadian flag, you're flying your own Quebecois flag everywhere. Imagine that in Germany with the Czech Republic, right? So you have this part of the country that is significantly different. It's kind of its own nation. In Europe, it's right now it's its own sovereign country. But like hypothetically, let's just say it was within the same borders. How would you deal with that?
Now you're getting me thinking about like empires and how they used to rule. Like what was the empire? Okay, let's continue with your analogy of, because that was the oh Jesus, why am I forgetting the Austro-Hungarian Empire?
Yep.
That included Czech Republic. That included a ton of nations. That included the Balkans.
And how did that go for them?
Okay. It was a thing though before it.
Canada is a thing.
Okay, how did they rule over the Czechs linguistically? Did they get all pissed off when like a guy from Germany came over and was like ruled over Czech Republic? Like I wonder, I want to know more of this linguistic. Like Hungary must
no.
Right, or the Ottoman Empire. That's a Turkish power base ruling over Arab populations. Did all the Arabs get pissed when they were like this Turkish guy?
How do nations form? Like just how in general, how do nations? What is a nation?
Like
country
historical.
How do you decide exactly what belongs to the country and what doesn't? How do you do that?
Yeah. Look, like I'm a big Kurdish rights guy, so the Kurds are arguably facing a situation in Turkey, like, but that's not a fair comparison. Quebec has like a ton of rights in Canada that like Kurds don't have in Turkey.
In general, like theoretically, like why do countries segregate? Why do geographical regions separated?
People's cultures, histories, languages. Look, there's people. The Kurds, if they were to get independence, you're taking a chunk of Syria, Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. Good luck getting four of those particular countries to like.
But you're very focused on details now. Throughout history,
I'm on
regions that have distinct cultures and different unique languages, like common languages, tend to form their own countries and nations. And countries where you have different cultures, societies, and nations within their borders tend to not exist forever.
Look, like India could arguably be 22 different countries, no?
But India is a very young nation. They've only existed for 70 years or so.
That's true too. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, man, this is something that.
And India used to be a part of Pakistan. Pakistan and India used to be the same thing with Bangladesh.
Yeah, until 1947.
And then they split up because they happened to have two religions. They were too different, so they split up.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get into a ton of comparative. Just like in China, it's currently the Han that are the dominant. Like when we think China, it's like the Han Chinese that are actually like the dominant. You have Tibet and the Uyghurs, and you have a bunch of ethnic minorities in China. So yes, no, like nation states and the peoples and cultures in them. Yeah. So keeping it in a Canadian example, I mean, it'd be an experiment to be run by, I don't know, try non-official bilingualism for a year. See what happens, or maybe you can't just change that back. Like I think I'd have and this is kind of just the micro thing here is the Governor General not speaking French.
So and how do you? Yeah.
Well, I think I don't. Are we even talking about this if she speaks all three right now? Like, it just seems like it's just like a little rupture thing that sprung up this entire conversation. Because if she speaks three within the next year, it's like, oh, okay, she learned. I think she's just symbolically much more important for so much other reasons. So
Yeah, but her
and then
French wouldn't have to be that good just to appease.
You're right. Right. So I think
precedent.
Yeah. So I think people just they're kind of mad she hasn't done that already. Well, okay, like she just got the job. Paciencia.
No, I agree.
So,
I'm
but then in terms of like the broader societal
implications,
implications, and I mean, yeah, man, like I don't like you're familiar with balkanization, the concept of, because you did have Yugoslavia, right? You had that nation, and then that went off after like the bloody war, Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, like, but before that, like under Tito and however he managed that, like he was dealing with lots of nationalities, but Yugoslavia was a greater than the sum of its parts kind of thing. So I don't like, I do like the official languages and acts, like I like a common language, and then in Canada we just happen to have two. Like I do believe if you're a new speaker, like if you're a monolingual Spanish speaker, a monolingual Chinese speaker, monolingual German, I do think whatever country you're going to, you just can't ignore the history that was there once you arrived. Like, you should, if I move to Sweden right now, I think, like, what's Sweden's rule on, like, to become a Swedish citizen? Would I need to speak Swedish? Like, what's the deal?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure you have to take some type of test.
Right. Okay. So nations have these tests, right? Where if I moved into Sweden, I'd be like, like, like your previous history doesn't matter. So in Canada, like, yeah, English and French.
Do you know this? So to become a citizen in the States, to become naturalized, like it's called more formally, you have to take a test on like U.S. history. Does that test have to be in English, or can you request to take the test?
Good question, man. Lots of questions I'd love to get a immigration expert on sometime.
Well, I'm pretty good at immigration.
Well, yeah. yeah.
know like all the rules and stuff.
The rules. It's amazing how much more the immigrants know, like the rules.
It's funny because I know like all the immigrant rules here, but I have no idea what the immigrant rules are in like Europe.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
Yeah, man. But I think, like language policies are fascinating. I'd love to look up how a country like South Africa manages it with 11 official language. Okay, does South Africa have the equivalent of a governor general? Are we gonna be crapping on that governor general because he doesn't speak 11 languages? Like, I'm just curious how some of these other nations manage it.
No, it's clearly unique here in Canada. But
unique.
before we end this podcast, we have.
Should we address Cody's question without Cody?
What was Cody's question again?
Should Canadian school kids learn 3 languages?
We can do that. Okay,
English, French.
So what I'm about to propose is going to lead into this.
Okay.
How do we empower Indigenous language? How do we make sure that Indigenous languages don't go extinct?
I'm going to defer here. I'm going to appeal to authority. There's better people working on this than me. I've kind of looked into this. I know we can spitball and everything, but I want to caveat that saying that people are very interested in that question. There's like institutions and people putting things into action. Look, man, like, you know me, we're the Lingaholics, as they said. Like, I want to see all the languages bloom brighter, and
we all have that in common. That's our ideology. That
is our ideology.
Lingaholics.
Yeah, I'm an adherent to that. Now, like, look, okay, I'll just talk. This is another episode I want to do down the road of like native Indigenous languages. I've tried to look into Cree and Blackfoot resources for one, because I'm a huge audio guy. I talk a lot about audio on this podcast. Like resources. Okay, I guess I'm just talking about it from like my learning it perspective. Now, I think you got to bring this into like, how could the kids of these different, the kids up north, where Cree is actually still pretty strong, but is it going to remain strong? I don't know. What's the policy to keep that language strong? I think resources is massive for like heritage speakers and non-heritage speakers, like I would be if I learned Cree or Blackfoot. So resources have to get like look at all the resources you have for Spanish and French nowadays on the, and that's what's encouraging to see when you see like Duolingo having Navajo up. Yeah, it's Duolingo, but that's something. Hey, so I think that they're like the nations themselves, that has to be a homegrown effort. You can't have somebody from the outside coming in and telling you what to do. Like they need to, it needs to be a homegrown grassroots thing. And look, there's so many people like in our group chat today, this guy named Anton Troyer, who's one of the leading guys in Minnesota to the revitalization of Ojibwe in Minnesota. And they're seeing some spectacular results in their school system. So some of these things are already being put into practice. And then to the broader picture, I think Canadians just need to learn more about Indigenous languages, man. Like this is a huge topic. It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mosaic across this entire nation.
Maybe Cody's idea isn't too bad then.
Yeah, man. But like, look, I struggled to teach French more than Spanish because my French isn't as good as Spanish. Like, I think you got to be a high level speaker of a language to teach it well. Inner city Edmonton, who's your Inuktitut speaker, like I like, okay, if Cody's idea is you got to start with resources. Education resources are like fundamentally huge. So, and then which Indigenous language are you teaching? Exactly. Plains Cree, Stoney, Blackfoot, Inuktitut, Ojibwe. That's just the first 5. Like there's 80, 70 some. And then I think this is more the pragmatist side of your argument, like getting kids interested in it as well. I think this is just more of a,
yeah, because what are you doing? You're taking away other subjects in order to put in
right, like
languages into the curriculum. So what do you take away? Math, social science, physics. What's
like.
And how is that going to affect Canadian school children if you substitute?
I'm not so much worried. Yeah, like I'm not worried about like non-native kids not learning Indigenous language. I'm worried about Indigenous kids that aren't going to have access. That's who I'm most worried about.
Fair enough.
So like Cody's argument, it's like, that's not his argument, it's his question. Sorry. His question is interesting, but I think it misses the boat on like, we got to keep these languages alive first of all before we can worry about teaching them en masse.
So the only one potential issue is that, by doing this, like we're all obviously feeling like a bunch of Canada in general is feeling I'm just blanking on words. I'm a little tired, but
no, it's getting late, man.
They're embarrassed and they're feeling bad. They feel embarrassed, ashamed for having this be a part of their history, and there is the possibility that through this feeling of being ashamed, you overcorrect in your reconciliation efforts. So you want to make sure that
and like overcorrect.
Whatever you do is that you don't overcorrect.
And that goes back to my like, because nobody should be telling First Nations people what to do. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
What do they want?
They probably don't want to be lifted up on a pedestal either. They just want to be left alone and be respected.
Right. Like, man,
and look, how would they feel? Talking about cultural cultural approbation. No.
Appropriation.
Appropriation. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little tired. Cultural appropriation. Talking about cultural appropriation. How do you think they would feel if like you're teaching Inuktitut to like rich as Toronto kids, like white Toronto kids? them learning
right,
about
like,
it. And I mean, like, that's fine, but like if you're enforced, the government is essentially
yeah, like
enforcing.
I think that question itself just shows how absurd like certain situations could get. The thing is, like, what if an Inuktitut teacher in Nunavut doesn't have the resources or feels that they're lacking in language abilities to teach it?
Yeah.
Where do you put resources to help that
Yeah.
situation?
No, for
Because
sure. You help them in their own nations.
yeah, and I think
That's where
the
you
language
start.
learning community, I've already kind of seen, because we're developing these apps, we're developing these sites. I think we can have it's something I want to explore, talk with you guys, talk with our language, like guys like Ace Buck language come up. Seabolt just went to Navajo Nation in the States. I think we could play a role with our technology. Now I need more know-how and knowledge on how this can all work, but just as like a inkling of a vision, I I would love to go on to Memrise and have like 30 hours of Cree audio. Like I'd kill for that. It doesn't exist. So, I mean, how can we make that exist? And then
That's a great point. Yeah.
right, like
How do
I can get
how do you
oh
how do you
man,
do
you got
that?
to sit
Do
down.
you
Elders are a huge
no, but
factor.
do you create government grant programs where
Yeah,
you
totally,
incentivize like companies like Duolingo to hire
totally.
Cree speakers to come in and create courses and
Yeah, you got to go up, talk to the elders, because you got it. Man, this gets into the whole like metaphysics and knowledge and history. These languages they have like the cultural like language is more than just like words and sounds, right? There's like a huge context to all of this. So you need elders to explain like the traditions and the meanings of words that
yeah.
might not exist or translate very nicely in English or French.
Oh wait.
So I mean, dude, there's this huge work, very ignorant subject, but it's something that's always kind of in the back of my mind of like, man, this could be is for my particular niche. Like, there's a ton of like amazing like bead making and making snowshoes and maple syrup. Like there's a ton of like indigenous practices that I think teach the world about. But for as a language geek, it's like there's that many languages in this country. Man, there's going to be a lifetimes of work ahead. Yeah. So, I mean, on this podcast, we want to get the people to talk to, like, kind of start to form a vision. And there's people out there, there's stuff happening. So that's something I want to tap into. For sure. Man, how amazing if we got this Governor General on, not only to talk about, imagine her talking about like Inuktitut and learning French. How amazing would that be?
Yeah, we should definitely get someone who speaks Inuktitut and
oh man,
all these different languages. That'd
all
be
these different languages.
Cree.
Where I teach in Strathmore is not too far from the biggest First Nations, the Siksika, the Blackfoot. They're referred to First Nation in Canada. So there's speakers of Blackfoot in that community. So just start making these connections in the community. So yeah,
no, interesting, fascinating stuff.
Lots of fascinating stuff.
Fascinating stuff for sure. And the complicate, language, it can be the most unifying thing in the world, but it can also be very divisive.
That's right. That's right. And we're here to navigate it on the Langaholics podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
So, all right. Should we wrap this up?
Let's wrap it up.
All right, folks. This has been episode 49 of the Langaholics podcast. Okay, if you've listened this entire way, episode 50 is going to feature Ale, also known as Langaholic, who I swear did not steal the name from. When I started our Twitter account, I discovered him after we already had Langaholics. So it'd be pretty cool. Langaholics and Langaholic for episode 50. We're currently working on an episode about the Afghan interpreter crisis that's happening. So another Canadian issue, but also an issue in many other countries, and lots of guests down the pipe into this hot pod summer. So thank you for listening. Cody, if you came back and listened to the last half hour without you.
Hi, we Cody. Love you, man.
Love you, buddy. And everyone keep on with your languages, no matter what language it is. Even if you don't speak French yet, you can still learn French.
Oh, wait.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.